This is the video review of Tobot V Tachyon from Young Toys. Here's a size comparison, and he's in the new scale for Tobot, which is a little bit smaller, which I appreciate. And here he is with his wave mates, Wild Chief and Jet Thunder. Okay, I'm going to start by saying I really like this robot design. I think the robot itself, just the aesthetics, is probably a 10 for me. It's just really interesting, it's sleek. It really has kind of a Macross vibe to me. Like, this is something you'd kind of see in the anime, minus the humanoid face would be a little bit more robotic, but otherwise it just has those kinds of lines to me. So I really enjoy the way he looks. And then one big flaw about this figure, like most Tobot figures, he does fill in a lot of gaps. There's not a lot of holes in this figure, except for right here in the torso. There is a huge gap, which is really an eyesore. And they kind of just cover it with this panel back here. But otherwise, he's a really sleek looking figure. He looks very much like a Japanese robot. Very interesting. And here's a closer look at the face sculpt. It's a little bit generic looking, but he does have a mouth and nose and kind of that typical goggle look. For articulation, he does surprisingly have a ball joint neck, which gives him a lot of range of movement and emotion in that head sculpt. So very nice on that, finally. He does not have bicep swivel still, and then he does have pretty hindered elbow joint, which does not go 90 degrees at all. It's maybe 60. It's definitely not close. And then nothing on the wrist still. And then for outward kick, he goes about this much before this side armor kind of gets in the way. And then he's got a full front kick almost. It's a little bit low. And then the back kick is similarly not all the way to the back, not 90 degrees. And then for the knee joint, it's pretty hard to see, it's really in there, but the knee joint is very slight. You can see that right there. So not a full knee joint of 90 degrees either. And then the thigh itself is actually pretty short, which just does not look right when he's like stepping forward, especially because his leg doesn't kick all the way forward either. It's just not quite right. Oddly enough, he does have thigh swivel, which is not part of the transformation. It was actually deliberate. And he does have a waist swivel, which is part of the transformation, and it's kind of detented, so you can cheat it so that it won't go quite as much. And then he does have pivoting ankles, but you can't really do much with those. So you can get him into halfway decent pose. The shoulders do go all the way around, but his backpack will crash into it. And then if you want to get outward motion on the shoulders, these are definitely going to hit him in the head. But you can get his arms out, and since he does have a head pose, you can get a decent action pose out of him. It's not much, but it is a step in the right direction, so it looks like they are trying a little bit more with the articulation, but it's not quite there yet. So there's definitely thigh swivels and a ball joint neck. Those do help, but he's still not quite at Transformer level. It would also help if this figure had a weapon. Could maybe give him a little bit more personality. So he does come with this key, which is a die cast, I believe. It's definitely some kind of metal. And it says 01 on it if you put it upside down. And then it has this plastic clip on the back. So decent key, feels pretty solid. And then to transform him, you fold his head backwards so it's out of the way. Then you can fold up this giant backpack. And then you already have the top and front of a car. And then you're just going to rotate the arms into the correct position. And then these little panels on the side of the arm slide up and which also hides the fist. And then you just collapse these into place, and then everything clicks into place nicely, and that's already half a car. So then for the bottom half, you rotate his waist around, and then you're going to rotate these side armors so that they're facing the correct direction. And then you fold in the heels, and those are going to, and then the entire foot will fold into the calf. And then this like ankle armor will fold back to clean up the look. Okay, and then you peg both the legs together. And now you're just going to angle it up. And then this part I'm a little unsure about how you're supposed to get this over this piece. So I should probably read the directions, but I don't typically do that. So I like to fold down the arm a little bit so it'll meet without flexing the plastic too much. And then you just finish folding the thighs up, which will compress everything into the car mode. And this is a really excellent looking car, and I like that there is a place for the key. It just clips right here on the hood. And this is kind of a, I don't know what kind of car this is, but it's not a real world car, but it's very similar to some. So it's really interesting looking. It's got a low profile. I like these wheel effects where the hubcap doesn't really move, but the wheel rotates around, and it's got these yellow highlights. So very futuristic looking. And the underside is nice and clean as well. So really excellent looking car. And then there is a key gimmick, but it's really pointless. You just put it in the back here, and this separates the legs, but you could also just separate them with your hands. The key gimmick just does not do anything. It's very pointless. And this is how he looks with the deluxe Transformers figure. Still too big, but I think this is a good size. Nice and chunky. Feels excellent in hand. So I'd say a 10 for quality. It feels really good. I don't worry at all that anything would break. Even if I dropped it, I'm not too concerned about it. For the fun factor, I would say that this is a pretty fun figure to transform. It only takes a few seconds. It only does the one thing. It just transforms. It doesn't really do anything extra. The key gimmick is very pointless. But the transforming is very satisfying, and it's more complicated than you usually get in a Tobot. So that's a nice change of pace. So overall, I would recommend this to anybody who does like Tobot, or maybe if you're interested in some of those older kind of Macross figures as well, this might appeal to you, because I really do think it has that same kind of aesthetic. So I'll leave the link in the description where I got mine. I like to buy mine from the same seller in Korea, from Soon. So I'll leave a link to his store, and I'll see you next time.